Hello, I'm Brad.
And I'm Jason.
You are listening to
Dice in Mind.
one of the benefits that we've had making contacts out in the Twitterverse and so on is we've mentioned this before, both Jason and I we have met some very interesting people. And one of them is Michael Lowe, who you're going to be hearing about shortly. Michael is an educator, and he has a fascinating perspective on the intersection of gaming and education.
Yeah, he really does. It's a topic that I think attracts both of us, Brad, because I've been in education, college education for so long, and you've been in the tech aspect of education for even longer. That you and I have had all kinds of these conversations as sidebars over the years, and of course, then my wife is a teacher. One of our dear friends, Eric, is a teacher and a principal, and I mean, we've been, and it runs in our families, both of us. So we've been surrounded by educators all our lives and still are. And so you can't help but have these conversations. But like you were saying, Michael's all about bringing RPGs to both the classroom and to kids. And as a bit of a personal aside, I have been interested in gamification for quite some time. Now you'll hear, listeners, that Michael doesn't love that term, but that's okay. Different strokes for different folks. We're coming at it from very different perspectives. But where I live professionally, there's this question sometimes of how can you gamify a course? How can you use game theory? How can you use role playing or video game ideas, philosophies to inform, enlighten, whatnot, your courses? And I had looked into this seriously, as you'll hear in the interview. I looked into this seriously several years ago, and it was a lot of work, and in terms of the payoff, it wasn't there yet.
Now
But
you're talking about like potential research, right?
no, actually,
No.
I'm talking about converting one or more courses, changing the delivery so that it was gamified. So I will say, after we spoke with Michael, I didn't say anything to you about this because we were going to be chatting like now, but after we spoke with Michael, it got me thinking. I still am interested to do that, to try it out. And here's what I mean by that, everybody. And hopefully this will provide a little context for what Michael's going to bring with us, because what you'll hear is Michael was able to show us all kinds of visuals from his work, that and his consulting firm that goes around and allows him to work with kids through RPGs around English. It's really cool stuff, really clever stuff. But we can't share we can't share all of that with you guys because it's his bread and butter, right? He was just doing us a favor to help us understand visually, and it's spectacular stuff. We'll have this all in the show notes, but it got me thinking. Like before, you have a class. And I'm thinking college or grad school class here, not kids. So this is a little easier. I want to say that I'm not talking about kids, but you have a class and you've got assignments, and you're grading the assignments, and the purpose of assignments, be they quizzes, be they writing, be they, if you're in math or something, problem sets, whatever it is, be they studio work, right? If you're French horn, then the purpose of these assignments is twofold, ideally. Best of all things, best of good learning theory. The assignment, on the one hand, demonstrates learning.
Yeah.
The assignment, on the other hand, promotes learning. Like, for example, in my courses where I have quizzes, not all do, but in my courses where I have quizzes, they are brief. They're multiple over a semester, and I tell my classes when the semester starts, the goal of these is for you to ace all of the quizzes. They are learning tools. You can take them as many times as you want prior to the due date.
Oh,
right? Because what does more than 50 years of learning research tell us unequivocally? One of the single, if not the single best tool to promote learning is repeated testing, and specifically low stakes repeated, not exams, but quizzes. Well, to tie this to Michael then, and
that's before you do that,
yeah.
two things. One, it's funny, we've known each other 30 years in August.
Probably never really talked about this.
No, we never really
No.
have. And I've never really asked, and it wasn't for any particular reason. We just had so much to talk about, is your teaching style. And it's funny how when you bring that up, I've had you just gave me a little window into that, which means at some point offline, we have to talk because I'm fascinated by it. Two, for me as a high school student, and you can correct me if my verbiage is wrong. I'm highly intelligent. So high school was not overly, it wasn't that tough for me. I didn't put a lot of effort into it either.
Right.
When I went to college my freshman year, that was the reason that I really, for lack of a better term, bombed out, because I was not mature enough or ready enough or understood that enough.
Right.
When I went back,
that was different.
And I got my bachelor's and my master's, both of those use that exact point that you said, and that changed how I learned. And I never really thought of it until, and I didn't realize potentially that that's what the reasoning behind it was. Was that. So selfishly, it was just two little fascinating insights based off of what you said. And it'll be interesting because obviously you'll hear Michael talk about a lot about, younger kids up into high school.
Yeah.
In the context of his programs and all that. And Luck of Legends is his website. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yep.
Really, but it would be an interesting discussion in the future to see how gamification, game theory, so on would apply to undergrad or grad work. How do you do that? I know we do that in a different way when it comes to education, because we're still educating in the tech world, but it's different, but it's funny how all of a sudden it's like some synapses are, this is terribly to say to a psychologist, but it feels like some synapses are firing that didn't fire before, and don't you dare make a joke about it.
Nope. No. But so, listeners, maybe we'll leave you with this as a transition before we welcome Michael Lowe to the podcast. That I've been thinking about this now for days, Brad, of what if we were to take a course, any level, doesn't matter, elementary, graduate school, I don't care. And instead of thinking about grades through the lens of traditional grades, and let me be clear, I'm all for grades. I don't have any problem with them. However, in terms of course design, to have fun while you learn and feel reinforced while you learn and be more intrinsically motivated while you learn, especially if it's like a class you have to take. What if instead of thinking as the teacher or instructor or professor, these are grades, what if we made a course? What if you designed your course like around XP? And there were opportunities, I mean, really serious, there were opportunities over the course to, in some way, level up.
You actually even used that term in a humorous context this week. I think we were joking about something, and you used the term, did you level up? And I thought to myself, I'm like, that's going to become a phrase that we're going to use a lot, just based off of this last interview and this idea of applying, to the tenets of RPGs or tabletop games, whatever it is, and use it as incentives. I could see myself using it as incentives with people that work with me or for me.
Right.
Just like education. I mean,
the leadership potential would be significant.
Yes. Yeah. that even goes beyond. I don't want to, with Michael has spurred, not spurned, spurred that sort of thought independently. And now, as we're talking now, there's some links there that would be fascinating discussion points, even though we exist in different.
We'll probably come back to this topic, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So with that, we are really pleased to bring you our interview with Michael Lowe. He was gracious enough to reach out to us on Twitter, kind of found us, if you will, and we're so glad he did. We had so much fun speaking with him, and this was one of those discussions that could have gone much longer. But we didn't want to do that to him. So without any further ado, here is our interview with Michael Lowe. Enjoy. Michael Lowe is a LegendsCan certified California high school English teacher, parent, storyteller, and game designer. He teaches kids nonviolent conflict resolution, collaboration, confidence, critical thinking, and creative writing using games, inspired by a love of learning, not fear or failure. Michael is also the creator of Luck of Legends.
So we just got done doing a brief discussion before we hit record with Michael Lowe. And Michael, you actually said something right before we hit record that I thought would be interesting. So you talked about like a facepalm moment when it came to education. Yeah. So talk to us about that in terms of, how you've integrated education and gaming.
Well, okay. So let's start at what, 11?
That was a nebulous question.
Well, let's go all the way back to 11. Let's do that. No, everybody has that compelling first edge of the seat moment where they were completely immersed in a game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how we get into it. And that's how we stay in it. Right. Here I am at 42 and I've been making games. I had a friend mention this to me the other day. He was like, yeah, I remember playing Lego battles on your floor when we were like 13. He's like, that was a great game. I was like, I made that game. He's like, I thought it was a real game. I was like, it was. But the thing that really stunned me when I started using RPGs to teach writing to kids was that RPGs are a lot of them. It depends on the system and it depends on the mechanics, and you have to be clever about it. They are far better designed games for doing what school is designed to do than school is. School's a very badly designed game. School has points that don't matter. Yeah. It's disconnected from all the wins that kids care about.
Yeah.
What do you care about? Peer celebration. I can tell you about 1 million kids who I've seen. They'll be months behind in their work, and a sporting event will come up. You'll watch a kid get 4 months of work done in a week because he's got to play.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because that moment on the field that kid has had, it was absolute oxytocin and dopamine, which kids are wired to crave, right? They were genuinely emotionally celebrated by their peers, right? And that is compelling. They are part of a crew. They have a feeling of belonging. And that's what happens at a game table when you're doing it right. So if you can connect that to an academic skill, you can turn what in any other circumstance is a horrible slog into joyous, celebratory, ferociously compelled practice. And that's what I've managed to do with Luck of Legends. And the reason I was facepalming is after figuring it out, it seemed so obvious that I felt really foolish for wasting time getting around to it.
So how give us a little, if you don't mind, of your background. Like how did you arrive where you are now, right? Because it's not like you don't typically get to go to school and, in college they tell you this is how you can incorporate RPGs into being an educator.
Well, that's funny. One of my favorite things to tell students is if anybody ever asks you, what do you want to do when you grow up? Tell them, I want to never be asked that question again. Because it's the worst question you can ask. The idea that a skill that you learn is going to be immediately connected to something you make money with is ridiculous. Right. Anyone who understands how learning works knows that it's this enmeshed network of skills. I can honestly tell you that a lot of my graduate school studies, I did better in precisely because I'd been obsessively pawing through game books in my teen years. Not because I knew that role-playing games were going to be this, boy, I'm going to make a lot of money in games. That wasn't where my brain was.
Yeah.
But the skills I was learning with compulsive practice, scanning, high-level analytical work. I was on the old 303 boards and creating, infinite damage loops for 3.5. I was, deeply enmeshed in a form of learning that was training all these different skills. Yeah. So this is true for any given area of learning. For me, I guess, if you want my origin story, how am I gonna phrase this? So I've been teaching in the classroom for 20 years.
Wow.
I've taught outside the classroom for private companies and tutoring, reading development, speed reading, all this different stuff.
Wow.
And of course, all the time, obsessively gaming on the side because I had this deep love that had developed when I was very young. And I had my son and started a game for him and a group of neighborhood friends around about like 4 years ago. And the kids had all come hang out at the house, and I was running a tabletop system that worked really well. We built our figures with Legos and, had a load of fun.
That's cool.
I actually have a game up on itch called Minifig Madness that's how you start the game. It's completely narrative. Build your figure. All right, pick the tags that apply. Okay, here's how you build a dice pool when you want to do something. Go get it. It's the best way to quickly get a game started I've ever found.
Yeah.
But what happened was when the pandemic hit, we tried to transition to online, and my son was about 7 at the time. And I quickly realized, I was like, okay, I can't run this online. I don't have the tools.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to find whatever I've got to try to keep them gaming. And what I found was, fifth ed. And the minute I booted it up, I realized several things in a row. One, it promoted a kind of play that my kids didn't want. They did not want to murder people. They did not want to have evil people to attack.
Yeah.
And personally, as a parent and an educator, I had real trouble setting up situations in which I didn't make violence problematic. And it was kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
If I give you the heroic experience that this game is trying to cultivate for you, I'm effectively telling you that solving problems with violence is great and fun and easy and heroic.
Yep.
And if I set it up so that it's problematic afterwards, well, now I'm just cheating you emotionally. And as an educator and a parent, that's a dirty thing to do to a kid, to say, yeah, do this thing. Okay, that was really bad what you just did.
Yeah.
So it was a catch-22. So I went back to the drawing board. I was fortunate to fall in with a group called Story Games Glendale, a bunch of really amazing developers there, Mo Poplar, Christian Yetter, Tomer Gurantz. So in spending time with them, some of them were doing some really cool work with Google Slides. And I immediately started to get nerdy. And I started developing a game that had a living document on Google Slides. So one of the great things about D&D, right? It's the endless books. As a kid, if you are surrounded by all this artwork, it's impossible not to get absorbed into the world, right?
Right.
And that's one of the troubles with indie games is, you want to have that same compelling, amazing experience, and you want to pay artists what they're worth. And let's be real, nobody gets into RPGs to make scads of money. So generally, this is a pretty big dilemma that you're faced with. Google Docs solved the dilemma. I was not running this class in order to sell a game. I was running this class to teach kids to write. So I formatted the entire thing. I put everything directly into the slideshow, and I found all the great compelling art I needed. And then I gave the kids their character sheets right there in the slide deck and started giving them homework. And the homework prompts were, all right, what happened to make your character feel this way about that person? Where would you like to travel in this world? What's a creature you want to meet? And this ended up developing into a full system, a narrative system. I have 8 different settings for this system now. And the kids get to vote on where they want to adventure. Here's an example for you. This is Beast Preservation Corps. So you play magical researchers in a world where there was a horrible catastrophe long ago. Wizards destroyed the earth. And now finally magic is coming back. And also finally people are starting to use it again. So you play as a crew of researchers who are trying to preserve magical creatures. And one of the first rules of the BPC is all life is sacred. So yeah, if they're having trouble, this beast population is having trouble with the local human population.
Yeah.
There's no riding in and killing either one of them. You got to figure out how to either get them living together
Very
or
cool.
engineer the moment. And, I can get nerdy about mechanics with you, the drama clock, some of the tricks I use to get kids highly collaborative and also focused on story first and relationship first and nonviolent in their solutions.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my origin story. There you go. So that's what I do full time now, is I run writing classes for kids using these games online.
Really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I know for folks listening, you're showing some Google sheets here, but just the idea of leveraging this existing technology, and then being creative like that.
Yeah.
I have not seen anything like this.
No.
And obviously, Jason and I both have kids, close to high school, if not in high school. And I could just see even them after they get over, trying to act like a teenager. I could see them getting into this. Really.
I mean, I kind of want to play this just looking at this. The listeners you all can't see this, but the visuals are beautiful and engaging and pull you in. And I mean, they're just slides, right? Which is so,
Michael,
so
is this something do you have like a version of this if we were to like put this in show notes or something like that? Or
well, so here's the problem that I've run into as a developer. I run my classes, and what I'm selling is me. I am a teacher. The first hour of every one of my games, I coach kids. I help them edit their material. We celebrate. We find the connections in their stories. If I showed you a filled out deck, they start at about 17 pages. They usually end up as 60 or 70 pages worth of story after 5 classes, with kids bringing in their own visuals.
Yeah.
The other thing is that they also learn how to do this, and they end up copying my decks and make their own games.
That's the rub. Yeah,
it's amazing. It gives. I mean, as a teacher, there is no better sign that you're doing the job than kids are teaching other kids. So I've had kids make. There's a Yellowstone game that one of my students made where you play as animals in Yellowstone National Park, trying to bring wolves back, because the ecosystem has been falling apart ever since the apex predator was taken
I could
out.
see you. Yeah. Jason loves the national park, so I can see that.
There's so many different ones. So anyway, this has been actually one of the interesting pieces about figuring out how to make this approach more common. One is I don't own any of this artwork. This is here as a way to increase engagement, get my kids invested. So I can put it all together and make it look beautiful, but I'm not stealing anyone's work because I'm selling my work as an educator.
No, I wanted educational fair use, and it's gorgeous.
And I think just for those listening, at the end, we'll give out your contact info, so that way
all the links.
It'll be easier. And then you can provide the information as you talk to them, because we met and started communicating on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting into talking about education and RPGs because of our background.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question while we're where we are right now.
Yeah.
So Michael,
I'll show you another one.
Learning outcomes wise, and you can take that either formally or informally. I'm not too.
Well, I take it very formally. I'm a certified teacher, and I take learning outcomes very seriously. So with every one of my classes, I assess and give both qualitative and in-depth feedback on 5 different Common Core standards for each of my students. Nice. So you get a summary of the kids' work. You get an understanding of where they are in terms of their grade level capacity to deal with creative writing. So tone, diction, description, all that good stuff. You get speaking, presentation, discussion, and editing and revision.
Yeah, feedback. Beautiful. Okay, that's where I was. So really, truly specific. I mean, it doesn't look like that to the kids, but educationally, this is very intentional.
One of the things that's funny about it doesn't look like that to the kids. I always think there's this perverse movement in education where they're like, tell them the standards, tell them what they are learning, and explicitly tell them they are going to do the following things. I'm like, boy, you did that to me as a kid. There would be no better way to guarantee that I had completely turned off by the time you had finished writing those on the board.
Right.
You tell me you're going to become a metahuman teenager 15 years in the future, when everybody has developed, only the 15-year-olds have developed superpowers, and you get to decide your superpower and what you want to do with it, I will write until my fingers give out and my keyboard stops, especially if I know other kids are going to cheer me when we read it aloud, and it's going to show up in the game we play. That's the key, is there are multiple ways in which the kids are rewarded. So the impetus to revise, the impetus to write, the impetus to practice all the academic skills we go over is directly tied to something kids value. And that's what a good game does, right? It teaches you to do a thing by giving you a system that incentivizes certain kinds of behavior. So take another example. And this is also really crucial. It's not just the celebrations. You also get story points based on your stories. You want to buy new tags for your character? You want to buy a new special. Nice. Let's say you want to make your beast companion be able to breathe fire in addition to turning invisible and having shadow magic. Great. You're going to have to save up some story points. And 1 point is what you get for writing a couple sentences.
Right.
2 points is what you get for a paragraph. And 3 points is when you really go hard. Oh, wow. And boy, you watch how quick those kids are absolutely hammering out stories and getting really nerdy about it, because man, I'm going to make my character, just you wait, I'm going to buy nuclear spikes and go for it.
Few things, I can't help but lapse into my background. Few things are more compelling than a really cleverly designed behavior modification chart.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And it's funny because I hate the words behavior modification. Anytime anybody says, what's your behavior management plan? I always say, I got a relationship building plan. Yeah. I ain't got a behavior modification plan because I don't work with dogs. But that's the language of education. That's part of the design problem we have in school. Even the language we use is incorrect to the task. And the language of games is so much more compelling and so much more accurate to what you want a kid to experience if you want them to own learning, become obsessed with learning, get invested in it, and practice it on their own, which is the key. That's what you want as an educator.
Have you gotten on feedback? And I'm not trying to.
No, please.
No. Have you gotten both positive and maybe more negative feedback from parents or anything like that? How have the parents responded, or no?
Slavering, frothing joy.
Okay.
Just to be honest, you can go check on Activity Hero. You can check on my site. I've gotten nothing but 5-star reviews. If a kid comes to my game once, the only reason they're not coming back is that they haven't got the time or the means to sign up again. My biggest problem in this class is just figuring out a way to contact parents, because I'm really good at what I do, but I have no idea how to market. So that's one of the reasons. I don't know what marketing is. I don't know how to do it, and I'm having to teach myself along the way how to connect with parents and find that audience. And I've been hesitant to move on to OutSchool. They take 30% of your earnings. And that's massive for independent teachers. And I'll be real. I think what they're doing is very similar to what Uber has done to taxi services. Sure. They're trying to turn education into gig work. So if you're in college, if you're part-time, if you can afford to run multiple courses a day and have them not be academic, but sheerly, online babysitting, then you can afford that 30% dip maybe. But you're going to have to pack your class, and you're going to have to lower your rates to compete. And I'm not able to do that. So that sort of limits me in my impact, and it means that I have to find other ways to bring people to the program. Parents universally are just like, oh my God, my kid, I had to take them away from the computer because they were writing. And that floors them, because for a 13-year-old, especially now, there's no emotional compulsion, right? There's no reward in writing. Where do you find people to cheer for you? Where do you find people to celebrate and get excited about the stories you tell? You don't find them unless you're in my game, and then you do.
You had mentioned before we hit record that you were looking for ways to adapt this to an online environment, obviously, because we're in a pandemic world. So how did you end up? Because I mean, again, we'll give out your contact info and folks, the stuff here is just visually stunning.
Really cool stuff.
Yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But you had to kind of start looking at this from a perspective of being a remote teacher, in effect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, when we hit the pandemic, I actually went in the spring. This is by my son. He's in one of my games. That's the other thing. My son would never write anything if I asked him to.
Right.
His games, he's written page after page for his peers. And when he's writing it, he's like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you about this. Like, shh, I can't look at him when he's writing. But he's gone in a year from 7 years old, writing a couple sentences to writing 3 pages per week for the games that he's able to get a seat in. Which for me as a parent is such a win. I'm like, okay, don't mess it up. But the online trick, I went to my admin, in the spring when we initially shut down. I'm in California.
Yeah.
And I said, look, if this continues, we need a plan for the fall. And I think we can look at this one of 2 ways. We can either look at it as, what are we going to do? We can't do the regular things, or we can look at it as what stumbling blocks to education can we blow up by using this model? So I said, look, we could do things like small classes. Give me a working group of 5 to 10 kids for 30 minutes. And then give them, have a collective work space that they work with. And then we touch back at the end of the week. I was teaching 11th grade. And I said, there are things we can do to make this work for kids. To give them stability and comfort with a smaller group, to give them work and feedback that will be meaningful. And of course, we were unable to do those things because of the state requirements and the ed law surrounding how you teach kids. So this is my response. This is highly engaging. This is the way to do it. And I'm sorry, Brad, you were going to say.
No, I was fascinated when you said 11th grade. So I have a 10th grader and a 12th grader.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Jason's are very close. You're able to, because I'm visually looking to make sure
Don't get caught.
Around.
Don't get caught. Yeah.
I would struggle to see them do a lot of writing. They do a lot of playing, but they don't do a lot of writing. And you're actually seeing positive results from kids that age doing this, which absolutely fascinates me, just based off of what I know of kids and my experience, and then obviously as a parent.
One of my kids is currently up to 100 pages on the novel he's written since he started with me.
That's awesome.
Starting to make a online site. He's 12. He's written over 100-page novel that's based on all of our work together.
Nice.
And it's gotten very Doctor Who. Like he'll dip into different games and pick up, through portals, pick up characters from other dimensions so that they can join in. The problem is not that, I don't know, it's like a lot of things, right? The problem is never that we don't have the tools or that we don't have the ability. It's that we are slow to adapt.
Yep.
It takes a lot of hustle to change your game. It takes a lot of rewiring to change the approach you take, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much possible if you're willing to make that shift. These games keep kids on the edge of their seats for 2 hours straight and then keep them writing. I mean, one of the things that's become a tradition is the after party, because kids will get so into the game that we'll be ending and we're talking, I'm making slides and we're choosing prompts for your next week's story. And kids are like, wait a minute, can I stay on? And I'm like, yeah, okay, who's playing host this time? And they'll stay on for an hour writing stories together. Because the bottom line is that's what kids want. They want the social engagement and celebration of doing a thing together. If you're creating and writing together and it's being celebrated, they will do it absolutely with joy and complete investment. And it's just us. We're slow. I was talking with a math teacher the other day, somebody really cool. I'm meeting all these amazing people on Twitter who are in education and games.
Yeah.
And, this is a guy, Mythematics. Jason, he works with a guy named Peter, who's at Game to Grow, which does social game education. And we were talking about mechanics, and he was saying, I built this game. And I said, okay, let's talk mechanics. Do you have a way to get them to practice math? Because I've figured out reading and writing.
Yeah, good. Yep.
I'm wondering what you got to have them do math. And he said, well, that's difficult. And I said, well, what about attaching, a differentiated approach where you say, all right, you can get your standard roll, right? Let's say you got a 2 dice pool or a 3 dice pool based on your tags. I can go into that if you guys get nerdy about it. And And then you give them, but if you can do one problem from whatever it is you're practicing, so you can do this with a mixed age group, right? You're working on your times table, dope, we'll do that. You're working on fractions, we'll do something with fractions, right? And if you can do it in 30 seconds, you'll get a boost. And even if you practice it, you'll get an extra die, right? You'll raise your success a full level if you actually succeed at the problem. Just for doing the problem, you'll get the extra die. And he said immediately, he said, well, but I don't want it to be abstract. I don't want it to be without a tie to real world learning. Yeah. And I said, but it is tied to real world learning. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? And I said, listen, if at that emotional moment where the drama clock is clicking down and you have to stop the stampede of lightning bolts from falling off the edge of the glacier and you're trying to cast a magic net to catch them, if at that moment you pull off the roll because you made the equation, everyone at the table will scream your name. Every other kid will genuinely, they won't be clapping for you because the teacher said, nah, everybody clap for Billy's story. They're going to be cheering your name because you did the thing. You pulled it off for everyone. And that's the moment every gamer knows. Every gamer's felt that, right? It's the click, right? Mm-hmm. You connect that to doing math. Watch how that kid goes and practices up. Watch how they master it because it's compelling. You've given them a reward that matters. And he looked at me and he was like, I hadn't thought about it that way. And I was like, I know, me either. And then, you know, that's how I'm thinking now. And that's part of the facepalm, right? How did I miss this? I've been craving this high since I was young. And when I say high, I mean the oxytocin and dopamine, right? That wonderful immersive rush. And
because that's what learning should be for everyone all the time, even if you do have to slog through stuff because you just have to know it.
Yep, absolutely. And if you can turn a slog into a joyous, emotional narrative moment, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the notion, it's like listening to you, it brings to mind something that leading up to our interview these past couple of weeks, I've just been thinking about. And you know, I think that, okay, I'm taking some creative license here, but you're an English teacher. So if anyone's going to cut me the slack, it's you. Yeah. But you know, from the standpoint of gamification and everything you're talking about here, and making it rewarding again, because learning should be intrinsic. And of course, we know I'm just going to assume, Michael, you'll agree when I say P12 education, since our generation. Brad turns 48 tomorrow, but the difference 42. Here between us. Yeah, the difference isn't too great, right? So when you think of when we were kids, it might not have been fascinating in grade school, for example, but it didn't look like it does today. And it's so accountability based and metric based. And I say that as someone who loves metrics, but the motivation has been made external.
I will give you this. As an educator, I'll tell you the word that I think people misunderstand most in education, and that word is data.
Agreed.
Data is a word that's used as though it is some sort of holy grail. It's like, well, what do the data say? And my hand always goes up and I say, what numbers are we looking at and why do they mean anything at all? Correlation is not causation. My high school students can tell you that. They've studied it. So if you can't draw a causal relationship between a particular thing you're doing and an outcome, then don't tell me that number means anything at all.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know about the generational shift in education. I do know that No Child Left Behind sort of was the first big move towards destroying public education. Yep. And it's been chased down by a lot of other really terrible moves nationally and locally.
Well, because it's easy to report, it's easy to use to get justification for funding, and it's easy policy and politically to have a few things to say.
It's silver bullet. It's silver bullet
very much.
Politics. It's like you don't get elected by saying I can't kill the monster. It's complicated and nuanced.
That's right.
And it'll take generations. And we're all going to have to spend a lot of money and time figuring this out. You get elected because you say I got a silver bullet. I'll shoot the monster. Yeah. No single policy is a silver bullet. No single bullet
Yep.
will shoot the monster, because the monster is something we've created. It's a societal monster.
Mhm.
You can't educate if kids can't eat. You
That's
can't
right.
educate if kids can't have a safe place. There's
right.
about a million different reasons that kids struggle.
Mhm.
My concern always as an educator is I want my room to be a place of safety, warmth, and joy.
Yeah.
You
Nice.
have to be able to trust to learn. And that's
Mhm.
another thing about, role-playing games, especially where they're moving now, safety tools, session zero, all these different tone setting and expectation setting tools that people are using. They're hugely brilliant. They're exactly
Mhm.
what you need to do to
Mhm.
create a classroom where you
Mhm.
have a genuinely collaborative culture. And the brilliant thing is, how do you learn to trust someone, right? You have an experience
Right.
where you rely on them in an emotionally intense, vulnerable moment, and they catch you. They do a thing and they follow through, right?
Mhm.
And that's why it takes so much time to build a really great collaborative culture, right? In your classroom. You know what's genius about role-playing games? Give me a session.
Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah.
I'll start a drama clock where something terrible is going to happen if you all don't work together and have successful moves to pull it off. Kids will be yelling, use the this tag. Oh, wait a minute. I got you. Look, you can use this ability and then I'll do this. All right, cool. And immediately they're building the kind of trust in each other, not in
Mhm.
me. I mean, I'm there too. And yes, of course, me, but building that kid to kid trust and
Mhm.
genuine care about an outcome, that's huge.
Yeah. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. I get excited. You could tell. I'm sorry.
No,
you
it's good. We like excited.
I'm gonna go there.
It's you never want to talk to someone who's like dedicating their life to something, and it's like, so how is it? And it's like, it's all right. That's not
I'm
very
okay with
encouraging.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is really interesting. It just makes me think, in the best situation, learning, I'm gonna mix my metaphors here, but learning is all about XP, right?
I mean,
and it should be intrinsic.
well, and let's say this too. XP is not about murder.
Right.
XP, instead of being about murder, is about creative, critical thinking, empathy, problem solving, bond building. It's about generating, not destroying. Because let's be honest, and I got a blog about this. If anybody's interested, you can find all of my work
I saw that.
at luckoflegends.com. So luckoflegends.com, you can go there, you can find classes, you can find my blogs. But I had some real reflection. Our fiction trains kids that heroism means you find someone who's at fault for the ills and the problems that you suffer, and you hurt them until the problem's fixed.
Yeah.
And not only is that a recipe for cycles of trauma and violence, it's also the absolute last approach that's effective for all of the major systemic problems that we face as a globe.
Yeah, that's right.
You want to fix climate change, you can't punch anybody and fix it. It's a massive systemic change, and everybody's got to figure out how to get over their various issues, work together, negotiate, compromise. It's going to be emotionally nuanced and complex, and it's not going to be viscerally satisfying and violent.
Yeah.
You want to solve systemic racism? You can punch a racist. It won't fix racism or systemic racism.
Yeah.
It might be temporarily satisfying. I mean, I'm going to guarantee that's a fun thing. That's a fun move to make, but it's not going to fix the problem.
Right.
So I'm very interested in teaching kids and helping kids learn. As an educator, I feel it's a huge responsibility. If somebody comes into my room, I'm helping them cultivate values in addition to teaching them academic skills. So as a teacher, if I encourage them to face problems in violent ways, then I'm encouraging them to have, problematic interactions in their lives. It may not manifest in punching somebody on the street, but violence manifests in a lot of ways, in the way we speak, in the way we carry ourselves in the world.
Adversarial relationships.
If you got to learn how to communicate in a positive way. So I create a lot of, there's a lot of drama in my games surrounding misunderstandings. I often call it the Doctor Who approach. I've been binging that with my family. And I love Doctor Who because, my son turned to me at one point and he goes, "Daddy, it's just like your games." And I was like,
that's so cool.
Because you can't fight your way out of anything. Violence never works. The monsters are people too, so don't call them monsters. Figure out what's going on with them. Most problems come down to a misunderstanding, and you can figure it out and fix it. But it doesn't mean there's not going to be edge of your seat drama and lots of back and forth and having to figure things out. Right. And everything is always solved by groups of people working together. The doctor may be magic, but boy, he's nothing without everybody he's got backing him up.
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been so much.
Finally.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time with us, Michael.
I'm sorry, I was somewhat quiet just because I was
absorbing.
I was enthralled with it, so I don't.
Yeah,
thank you.
No, so an important question, I think, before we wrap up here. So, if there are parents or others out there who are listening to this, and it's like, okay, so I want him to work with my kids. Right. What's the, and we'll put this in the show notes, of course, but like, what's the next step? How can people get a hold of you to hire you, to have you work with their kids, to just move forward professionally with you?
Well, luckoflegends.com has all my information. It's got my classes. It's got everything you could possibly want, links to interviews. I would also say, there's the next step here for me in sort of making this material available to a larger audience. And if anybody out there is interested in working on developing this and helping get it into educators' hands, I'm definitely excited to start teaching people how to do what I do. And you can find some of that in my blog. I just got the chance to work with the amazing Steph. She's at TTRPG Kids. She does reviews of games for kids. And she has worked with her 2-year-old and taught him how to story game. She reviewed the game that I made with Daniel Hines of Story Podcast. So Stories Podcast is one of the largest, longest running kids podcasts on the web. And we made storiesrpg.com. You can go there. Everything's free to download, and that'll give you a sample. It's got coloring book illustrations. It's zero prep. It's got read alouds, and it's a great way to start playing a story game. She played it with her 3-year-old, but on the blog, we talk about how to teach kids from 2 through 6, and then I deal with 7 through 13 using RPGs. And I'll be releasing more content like that as the year goes on. It's just hard to keep up. I've got so many plates spinning right now that I'm sort of looking to see if I've got extra appendages I didn't know I had. It's the fun part about working for yourself is you're never off the clock. StoriesRPG.com, luckoflegends.com. And you can also look me up on itch. There are a few games there. There's actually a slides-based game called Foster Monster there, which is a version of what I do with kids, only without fancy art. On itch too, you can find some games for adults. Zero Samurai is the one I'm probably proudest of. I based it on the work of one of the script writers for Seven Samurai. It's a book called Compound Cinematics, but I think a lot of the approaches that Hashimoto takes towards script writing really apply to role-playing games. So that game has been that's one of my nerdy sort of swan songy texts. But yeah, there's plenty of ways to get a hold of me, and I would love to talk to anyone. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Oh, I'm also on Twitter at @LeftLegends.
That's how we found it. We were talking.
And you're quite active on Twitter, and just like, because with us following you, we're seeing your interactions with others, and the conversations you're having with other educators or educationally adjacent people, shall we say, are really interesting. It's like yet Brad and I have harped. I mean that in a positive way, but Brad and I have harped in multiple episodes as of late about how impressed we are with the warmth and inclusivity and dynamism of the RPG community on Twitter.
Amen.
Really,
100%.
And I've enjoyed watching your threads because it's there in spades, and it's with an educational lens, and it's just the coolest community out there. So,
I've been floored too. Like I said, marketing has been a learning curve for me. Twitter has been a surprise, because I've been, as an educator, I developed an early aversion and terror of social media, and have sort of stayed out of it for years. And all I had was my student facing website, which is still up, loweslanguage.com, which I'm still proud of. It's good stuff. If I ever get back in a high school classroom, which probably won't happen, but if I do, it's right there waiting for me.
Yeah.
But Twitter has been amazing. I'm actually putting together a Discord. I've met some German scholars who are putting together an academic work on educational RPGs. So I'm actually, one of my projects is I'm working on a chapter for that.
Good for you. That's cool.
It's really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm the practical. They've got a lot of theory and they're like, oh my God, we finally found somebody who's actually doing it. And I'm like,
yep,
cool. I'll write with you. So there's been amazing community built there. And I really feel that there is momentum for a real sea change and a use of games in a very positive and productive way to start teaching in a new mode. So
this is paradigm shift. To me, it just looks, as a parent, someone who's not a direct educator, but an educator from a parent perspective, this is paradigm shifting. And when you do get that Discord up, obviously we're gonna oh good, then do me a favor.
I got you.
Yeah,
I got you. Let me
send
hook
us
you up.
and I want to make sure that I'm gonna say this wrong. That we retweet it. There we go.
There it is. You're all about the Twitter.
Yeah. So we were averse to it too, and then finally we realized there's and the, like Jason said, I have been preaching this for a while, is that you can always find the seedy underbelly of any social media platform. Yeah. But the Twitterverse, when it comes to role playing and so on, is
so that tweet right there has it has not only the entire guide to how to use role-playing games in an educational way that Steph and I put together. It's also got a list of all the great educators who I've met and the kind of work that they're doing, and an open invitation to the educational Discord. So if you want to jump on there,
Michael.
come through. There's nothing weirder than being retweeted in German. It was really sweet. I was like, I got a retweet in German, and I was like, I don't know why I'm being. Thank you. And he was like, hey, we love your work. Don't worry. Just wait till all the other Germans get on. I was like, really?
That's right.
People know who I am in Germany?
That's awesome.
There's great people on there.
Yeah. Look, thank you so very much. We will put link all of this in the show notes, especially that Twitter thread. That's really cool. What a good condensed way to do it.
And Jace hears me say this, and I truly say this: we have to, if you're game for it, we're gonna have you back on, because this is fascinating.
Dude, anytime. And if you ever want to have a game run, let me know what you want to play test. And
that'd be awesome.
All right, game on.
Deal.
Game on, literally.
Deal.
I'm ready. I'm zero prep anytime. Let's go.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Such a joy to meet you and to talk with you. And man, just so interesting, Michael. So good.
Thank you. It's super exciting for me too.
All right. That was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, we record the intro after the interview. So we have to temper it a little bit because we don't want to give anything away. But now that you have listened, you as our listeners, all 5 of you have listened to this, hopefully you can hear the exuberance and just this is his calling. And this idea, I had never, it's something I never thought of, and it bears, it is worth continued research and continued discussion.
And you have to give, I mean, Michael, we both give you credit. You and those who are doing the same kind of work. I think it is no secret. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, since, you pretty much have crumpled and thrown away our fourth wall anyways. So I'm going to go on a limb here, but I suspect the majority of all our listeners, like at least 3, I suspect that they would agree with what I'm about to say, or at least agree in recognition. Teaching can be difficult work. I mean, there's just a reality in this country. We have a set of values that just doesn't really these days value public education in terms of pay, reimbursement, time, whatever. But if you know educators, like in your personal life, like we do, these past 2 years, have been especially challenging because of how COVID and the restrictions around the pandemic have affected our schools. Okay.
And how quickly, and don't forget how quickly people had to shift. And we could go on
yes.
forever, and how that affected demographically different locations, economically different locations,
Unfairly, right.
unfairly, and teachers had to account for that.
That's absolutely
And-
right. Yeah.
And it's like you said, I guess for me as a platform, I grew up with teachers.
Yep.
I read at a very young age because my grandmother was a reading teacher.
Yeah.
So it is one of the, what's the best way to put it? The toughness to payment ratio
Isn't great.
Isn't
great. Yeah.
is one of the worst I can think
Yeah.
of in any field.
Right. And so I just mentioned that because then you've got Michael and others doing similar kind of work in the classroom who amidst all of this are just wonderfully enthusiastic to put in the time, the effort, the passion to experiment with these approaches. So Michael, thank you. It was a joy chatting with you. Good on
Yes.
you. We look forward to having you back. And with that, let us walk over to the GM corner. Brad, what have you been? You've been up to a ton, I know, but pick something. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I'll pick something that you and I talked about yesterday, and that is I am going to forget the name of it. It's what Modifius came out with, the dossier, or
is this the Cthulhu game you were talking about?
No, that's separate. This is Modifius. Remember, they came out with the free PDF.
Oh, are you Star Trek?
Yes,
I have it on my desktop right now. I was flipping through it digitally this morning. This is here. You keep going. I'm gonna look at.
No. This
okay.
I'll come back. We'll come back to talk about Cthulhu in a second. But
yeah.
This is one I wanted to bring up because both you and I were kind of enthralled with this idea when it came out.
This is the trade ledgers, the trade ledger supplement. Available at the time of this recording from Modifius and on Drive-Thru RPG. Trade ledgers for the Modifius Star Trek Adventures game.
And it's free, folks.
It's free. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's just ideas. Every page is a set of ideas for an adventure.
And along with that, when I was reading through it, one of the things that we've talked about was this idea, the Star Wars game that I've been terrible at keeping up with, but we have to play, playing on the edge of civilization. In this case, in Star Wars, playing on the edge of the Empire.
Yes.
Or if you look at, original series, DS9 especially, they played a lot around the Orion Syndicate and on the fringe when O'Brien
because it wasn't in Federation space.
Yes. So this idea of being able to play not only on a starship and on a away team or whatever. Now all of a sudden you could potentially be playing an outside character like a Rios from Picard.
Yeah, a sandbox within canon.
Yes.
Yes.
So when I first saw this, I think I messaged you and I'm like, and I don't remember the exact terminology because
you
it's probably
texted
not
me and said,
here.
Look, they heard you.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes. Because so kudos Modifius, because I think it was a phenomenal release. Number one. Number two, you're giving it away for free for gamers. You can get the starter kit for free online, the PDFs, or very cheap. Maybe it's $5-6. I can't remember.
And it's totally worth buying, to be honest. It's such a good deal. It's worth buying.
Yeah.
The hard copy, excuse me, is totally worth buying. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Jason and I are still proceeding on our Genesis project, but we did get talking and we might have to. Okay.
So I'm going to out it because it's your idea. So all credit goes to you. We started texting back and forth about, right, because we were both in the middle of like busy days, but this thing came out, so we're making it a point to flip through it and to get it in. And so Brad sends me this message to the effect of, if Star Trek Adventures and Modifius, if they're going to take this approach, which is kind of it is one of the major reasons we were looking at a Genesis narrative dice port for Star Trek. Brad texts and he's like, maybe we should just leave that where it is, take what we've done and start writing duet adventures
Yes.
on the fringe for Star Trek Adventures and pitch them to Modiphius. Everything there. So I told you, I think that sounds brilliant. I think the pitch Modiphius is also akin to that great New Yorker cartoon decades ago of Then a Miracle Occurs in step 2, but still, so we'll keep you all updated. Brad and I have some talking to do.
But yeah, it was to me, this idea of engaging with this material. They've stepped into a realm that you were really into, and I was ambivalent about at the beginning.
Yeah.
But as we've talked over the podcast, I've become a great fan of, and now all of a sudden this came out. So outstanding work. The other one that I actually, I don't even know how to explain it without it being gross, but that got me excited to the point that well, it just got me excited, not in a gross way, but Jason's laughing and trying to see if I could dig myself out of this hole. Green Ronin mentioned, so they haven't launched it yet, but they are launching a Kickstarter. I want to say it's a Mythos of Cthulhu. I can't remember the exact.
That sounds right.
And so it's not started yet. At the kickoff, you can sign up if you go out and look for that, or go to Green Ronin's website. They can link you to the Kickstarter page where you can sign up to let you know when it opens. But they asked if we wanted to do any sort of live play with
cool
the game. And so after I stopped acting as Giddy as a kid on Christmas morning, I sent them a message, and I definitely want to talk to him about it. Just because, one, obviously being able to play with people from the company or friends of them, or people who had some sort of development engagement with it. I don't know, but first time we've been invited by something like that, and truly humbled by them asking.
Right. Clearly they've never seen us play.
Yeah, exactly. So, and whatever you do, don't count our viewer numbers or listener numbers. So, but jokes aside, I was flattered for the both of us that they asked us.
Yes.
And we're gonna talk to him about it, because I think there's possibilities. Cthulhu is one of those things where neither one of us early on in this podcast had a lot of interest in, and what I didn't realize is kind of the bleed of that, the Lovecraftian mythology, how it's permeated in different areas. Chaosium owns stuff, and
it's really
Modiphius owns stuff, and now Green Ronin with their stuff. It's a fascinating game. I've seen it played on Twitch.
Yep.
So being asked to do something like this, I think would be just killer to do. So,
so
that's really between Modiphius and our friends at Modiphius and our friends at Green Ronin, just within the past 3 days, that made the whole week.
Yeah, and you know what, it's really neat. Now when this episode releases, of course it's a bit farther in the future than when we're recording it. We do that on purpose, but things are starting to pick up. Things are starting to pick up for the podcast. Our presence on Twitter and our appreciation for what we see on Twitter continues to grow. And I think for the Jam Corner, I'm just going to leave it at that, other than to just circle back once more to STA's trade ledgers. Brad and I are going to be talking more about that wonderful and free supplement, and more about duets. So Chris or anyone else we've chatted with online at Modiphius, we might be sending you something before the year's out.
That little release, and I just mean, like, it's a free release. It wasn't a big release like Shackleton, Expanse, or whatever the case is, but that one got our attention just as much as a new book release does.
Oh,
just because it fits that genre that we've wanted to play, that we play, and you've played in Star Wars for some time now.
Yeah.
And now would have the ability to play this in another universe.
Yeah, another part of
that
it. Another, yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I don't know about, I know we're going a little long here, Brad, but I don't know about
Mhm.
you, but the presentation, not the formatting and the visuals, but the presentation of that supplement, the notion of having 10 adventure primes, if you will, where instead of having an entire adventure written out, they provide context and guidance, and then you do the rest. Maybe you've seen that. You've been exposed to more. I've not seen that before from any of the games, where it's just, here's how to do it, here's how to do it, here's how to do it. It's just a prime, a start for each. And that's very appealing, because the imagination just runs.
Ironically, the only time I've ever really seen that is in some of the Cthulhu gaming I've seen out there. So ironic,
Yeah.
there's another
Okay.
crossover, but yeah, I'm completely with you. It's like, I mean, you could create a whole new book of material for this.
Wink, wink, nudge,
wink,
nudge.
wink.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. So before we say goodbye, listeners, just a heads up. We have one more wonderful interview coming your way next week for our first burst of 5. And then we're going to spend an episode where Brad and I kind of look back, look forward, and get into actually a very specific topic for application. Certainly a favorite of mine. And then, behold, there were 5 more. We are going to have another round of 5 interviews, because we didn't want to say anything beforehand until Brad is waving his arms around. He's so excited. We didn't want to say anything until we were sure we could actually get it done. But we're switching our format a little bit going forward. Yeah. And instead of you listening to us all the time, we know that recently in an episode we said, well, we're going to get more interviews. Well, actually, we're getting a ton more. So we have our next 5 scheduled, and then we're going to do another 5, and then another 5. Next week, we have a wonderful one coming. The next round of interviews are getting even bigger and badder. And we're going to open with a heck of a punch. We also have some additional news that we'll share along the way that we think some of our listeners might be interested to follow along over the next year. But for all of that and more, you'll have to wait. As always, be well, stay well. We will talk to you next week.